everyone, it's Raghu back with Mindrolling, and a very fascinating, wonderful person, and two of them, although one of them I haven't really met, but Patrick McCollum, welcome to the show, and Gabe, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank
Excited
you.
to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to have you. And Gabe, I did see the... okay, so let's set the premise. I think, Gabe, you should set the premise a little bit, okay?
Yeah, see, I know it's hard. It's a hard one to kind of to summarize easily, but it's
So wait, there's first of all, it's a film that Gabe directed, and the film is about Patrick. We can start there, but take it a little further.
Yeah, so I guess it's like at its heart, it's a character study about Patrick McCollum, who's here, who's probably one of the most fascinating people I've ever met, and I've met so many different kinds of people making documentaries throughout the years, the greatest athletes to all kinds of fascinating people. But when I met Patrick, it kind of blew my mind, almost so much so that I didn't know if it was real or not real, his life, and it prompted me to hire an investigator and do all this stuff because the stories that of his life are just so remarkable and strange. But Patrick, aside from kind of living a fascinating life and doing many amazing things, he in the last 10 years had been approached by different tribes of the Amazon at a peace gathering and afterwards, who basically came to him and said, "We think you're this guy in our prophecy who's going to come and help to unite the tribes of the Amazon, help save the Amazon, and in turn save the world." And Patrick kind of reluctantly, at first kind of said, I don't think I'm the guy. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just kind of a regular guy. And ultimately, after 8 years of pursuit from these tribes, he agreed to try and unfold this prophecy. And I learned about this, and somehow I got kind of caught up in this story as well, following Patrick down the Amazon, trying to kind of help fulfill this prophecy. So it's just this really wild spiritual adventure, very funny, very strange. And, I feel like it's a film that has a lot of kind of deep meaning. And also, just to come back, it's just at the end of the day, a fascinating character study. And just if you're somebody that likes kind of interesting characters, that Patrick's kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, but some kind of quintessential American character,
I think maybe more of a character of the world, actually, although I know what you're saying. Let me just say one thing in relation to, we're going to talk about stuff, and some of it's beyond, a lot of it is beyond rational mind. Okay, so there's a way in which one has to be curious and open. In my case, I had the good fortune of meeting Ram Dass a long time back. I was just telling Patrick I'm from Montreal, and that's where I met Ram Dass. And when I met him, I trusted him intuitively that what he was saying was not bullshit. And I followed him when he went back to India the second time in 1970, and met Neem Karoli Baba, his guru, mine, and that words don't mean much these days. Certainly, guru is a really awful word. But the reality I would put it in is somebody no longer living in polarity, but more in non-dual. There wasn't a me and him. There was one thing. It was just, and he said that when we first met him, there's only one thing going on, Sabek and Hindi. So I eventually and very quickly realized that whatever I could think and whatever story I told myself was projection. And what he did in the case, not just me, but all of us, including Ram Dass, broke down that barrier that we have of insisting on a rational level of consciousness. Not that that's there too. There's many planes of consciousness, but that was broken into pieces, basically, so that I know now absolutely anything is possible and has happened and will happen. And so this story rang true. I'm just thinking right now, Patrick, and you met some this is really kind of far out for me. I was at the Kumbh Mela, not the one you were at the one a year ago or so, January.
Well, I've been to multiple ones. So
you have? Oh,
the
you've been
first
to...
one I went to was the Mahakumbh Mela G, which was the 6,000-year anniversary of the Kumbh Mela, and it, was the biggest whatever. Then they have them like every 12 years or something. Yeah. So I started out, I guess it was about 12 or so years ago.
Oh, so you were there 12 years ago.
But that's not where I met the indigenous people. I met them at the second Kumbh Mela I went to.
Now, did you know they were coming?
No, I had no.
You're just standing around by the Ganga and the Yamuna.
So you have to have an understanding of this. They had been told by plants and trees and animals and their plant medicines that the guy they were looking for would be in India at this time at this event, and they were going to go find him. But there were 100 million people there physically. I mean, on a good day, maybe there's only 60 or 70 million, but I mean, they would vary. But there were 50 or 60 million people literally physically together at all times. And so imagine them, indigenous people who didn't even know how to drive a car or do anything, walking into that and trying to find the one guy they'd been told was there. It was just crazy.
Did you get the backstory of them? Okay, we need to get to India. We need to get to Allahabad. Did you ever hear them tell you the backstory?
I did. They told me the whole story from the very beginning of why they even started and everything, but not initially.
No?
Initially, they just kind of said, we have a prophecy. You're the guy. We need you to come to the Amazon. And I'm going, I don't know what you're talking about.
But give us the backstory from their point of view. I'm really curious.
Okay. The backstory is that there are many different indigenous tribes, about 300 that we know of, different nations in the Amazon region. And they all have different, stories and origins and ways of doing things, but they have a couple things in common. And that is that they all have spiritual mentor leaders within each group. And those leaders listen to the plants, the animals, Mother Earth itself, and spirit to guide them and tell them different things. And they all had prophecies, some a little different than others, with key components that were all the same. But one of the real powerful ones, which is what led to them coming to me, was called the Roxa prophecy. Roxa. And it said that the creator of all things, when it created the world, created the Amazon to be the heart of the world. And the first being that it created was the spirit of the condor. Not the bird, but the actual spirit of the condor. And it created that spirit to be able to, when it manifested into physical form, to be able to fly above everything else and be able to look down and see what was going on everywhere. So all the other animals, people and stuff were, had different levels of what they could do, but the condor could go the highest up, have the highest view. And that condor spirit was called Roxa. Then their ancient story said that one day, many thousands of years later, the Amazon would be in trouble and being destroyed. It would be burning, the waters would turn poison, the animals would be killed, and the actual indigenous people and their wisdom would be being wiped out. And when that happened, the spirit of Roxa, the creator, would send the spirit of Roxa into a man or a woman. They didn't say it'd be a guy, just into a man or a woman. It would manifest. And that person would unite all the indigenous people of the Amazon and help them create a strategy to save the heart of the world. And ultimately, in their ancient prophecy, they believed the entire world depended on the Amazon. It was literally the heart of the world. So it would theoretically save everybody on the planet and the planet itself. So then fast forward, the Amazon in modern times, like now, 10 years ago, something like that, the Amazon's burning, the oil companies are destroying it, the water's polluted and poisoned, they're killing all the indigenous people, their wisdom's getting wiped out. All the things the prophecy said came true. So the tribes got together, about 300 elders all total, got together and decided to ask their different ways of addressing spirit what to do, what would happen. So the Anaconda people went to the Anaconda giant snakes, in the river and said, what are we supposed to do? The Jaguar people summoned the jaguars and asked them what to do. Some of them took plant medicines like ayahuasca and frog medicine and different things. Then they came together and they all had the same story, that Roxa had embedded itself in a person. It was a man, he was a peacemaker, and they would find him in India. I mean,
Really?
that was kind of it. And so, I don't know all the particulars beyond that, but that was the gist of the whole story. And so they're very poor people. They don't have resources. They don't fly. They don't have cars, but they pooled resources and picked 4 representatives from the 4 main peoples and, got them to India to come look for who it was. And then that's where I ran into them.
Jesus. I mean, Gabe, I don't know if have you been to India to this, or you just go to India?
No.
You don't even have to go to the the mail.
Yeah. Well, it's ironic because I am planning on going there for the first time.
Oh, really?
In a few weeks. So I've never been there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you should separately give me a talk to me. I could make things a little bit easier for you.
I've been actually looking for somebody coincidentally to help out. Patrick knows. I called him yesterday about this.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, definitely. Just right. I have get my number and we'll talk. But no, it's a needle in a haystack. I mean, it's impossible. I mean, in fact, all day long, they have these speakers and they're announcing people, so-and-so, Hari Shah is, we've got him here, is lost. I mean, people are, so trying to find somebody in that kind of atmosphere, it has to be really divinely intentioned on their part. So here they are. They say to you, hey, you're the guy. And you go, what?
Yeah, because it was nothing I ever thought of. And I'd actually worked with indigenous people in the past, just here in the United States for a number of different reasons. But I didn't know anything about the Amazon at all. Zero. I mean, I heard of it and I maybe seen some photos of it, but I didn't know anything. So I immediately turned and said, you got the wrong guy. I mean, I am a peacemaker and I do try to help people, but I wouldn't even know what to do, and they told me not to worry about that spirit would guide me. So then I told them, well, I actually couldn't go anyway because I'd had my back broken in an accident.
Oh.
And I was in a brace and I could hardly walk. And I was going, there's no way I'm going to go into the jungles or whatever of the Amazon. I'm functionally not able to do that. And they said, come tonight at midnight. It was the full moon at the Kumbh Mela, and we will do a special ceremony for you and you'll be able to come. And I went and did that ceremony, my very first ceremony with people from the Amazon. And, it was a profound experience. But the next morning I got up and took my back brace off and I could walk around. And so then I decided, what? These people have something. I got to do this.
Wow. That's so great. So, Gabe, you found out about this and thought, okay, this would be a great movie to make. And I can see why. And what were the I saw the picture. I told Patrick, and the relationship between the two of you in this film and in life was precious. Really, it was so honest and real and caring and kind to each other. So how did that all take place?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that I didn't just sort of decide immediately to make this film. In fact, when I first heard about it, I was like, I didn't know anything about any of this stuff, about India, about the prophecies. I had a little bit of knowledge or about, indigenous kind of, wisdom but very, very limited. So anyways, when I heard about all this, I honestly just thought it was kind of insane. And think about any Westerner with very limited, I understand Zen Buddhism and Eastern thought and Ram Dass and things like that, but this was like a different thing. It was different. And I just was, I don't know, most people would probably just kind of hang up and say, these guys are, this is just crazy. But something inside me, just kind of kept going with it. I don't know why. I was like curious enough, and the more I got to know Patrick, it wasn't even the prophecy, because that was just like, it was definitely kind of a sexy aspect of it, but it may be too far out. But the more I got to know Patrick, I just felt like, wow, this guy really, there's something to learn here. There's something with this guy's life. And then they invited me down to meet with the Kogi, who I didn't know anything about them either. I started to realize that, wow, this is like a really remote tribe that's very respected in the indigenous world, like for their wisdom and connection and just everything about this group of people, the Tairona people. And so I just said, wow, well, this is a good opportunity. And I sort of got to know Patrick more and just kind of really slowly got involved here. But I also want to be honest that even the whole way through, it was just so far out and so unknown, and the discomfort level was so high throughout the whole process, because, in the movie industry, doing a film like this is, like something for Netflix or whatever. They just, you would pitch the project and they'd think you're insane, or
Yeah.
this is what's going to happen, or is it going to save the world or not? It's just so bizarre for them. So I kind of had to go totally by instinct to kind of keep going into this. But my relationship with Patrick, to go full circle, really, really developed throughout this whole journey. And Patrick, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything, like he didn't know anything about what I did or what was going on, and I knew nothing about what he did, nothing about the movie industry, and I didn't have a clue. And so when we first started out, I'm kind of I'm kind of a Pollyanna sort of guy, as you see there. I have faith, and I just kind of move forward when other people wouldn't. He was extremely cautious about things, and he needed to know that everything was correct, because in his business as a documentary filmmaker is a whole lot different than making a movie. You're doing fantasy. This is real life. And so you got to really make sure that, all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, and that you're really sharing accurate information, or it can reflect on your own reputation. So he was very cautious as we worked our way through. And, we had some challenges around those things at different points in times. But I truly came to really appreciate him, especially, for two things. One, his artistic ability. He captured stuff that I think no one else would think to even try to capture, and then he somehow took all that, put it together, and made a movie. But the other part was, for me, observing him, is he had a spiritual journey. He started off as kind of a novice place in this particular realm. Maybe in other spiritual realms he had more experiences, but he was really just starting out in this. And I, on the other hand, had spent many, many years of my life as an elder for spiritual traditions and things like that. So I kind of understood what was going on in the background. Like you said, when Ram Dass would say, there's nothing is the reality that we see, there's all kinds of other stuff going on. And I got to watch Gabe slowly see that unfold. And both he and I changed. I became more like him in the sense that, I became much more concrete and appreciative and understanding of how the world works from a different perspective. And he became more spiritually, advanced in that way and came to really understand things you can't see or talk about. And I think the last thing I'd like to say about him is that, since you're connected to Ram Dass and stuff, spiritual things are very difficult to talk about because conveying something that happens spiritually is not something that everybody all experiences at the same time. It's something that you experience in your particular way. And then when you try to share it with somebody else, if they weren't there in your head, it's very hard for them to be in the same space you are. And Gabe has become very perceptive after the journey, after the movie. He's still really, exploring and traveling and widening his spiritual scope. And it's just a beautiful thing. And I love him for it, actually. He's become one of my best friends.
Oh, that's so great. You can see all this, by the way. Everybody, you'll be able to see the film. And it's multi-leveled on so many ways. I mean, the relationship with Patrick and the indigenous tribes, and all of it is well done, Gabe. And we make docs too here at the foundation, mostly around our experience in India. So I appreciate what you did. I don't think that we've said the name of the film in this. We've been here a half hour. The Man Who Saves the World. So it's question mark at the end. Okay, so a lot of people, I'm sure they're going to see this, and well, you were Gabe. This was you, skeptical, and certainly, and you expressed that in the film. And what happened for me. And I guess this is why she is there, Jane Goodall, who I think is universally loved for who she was as a person and the work that she did, no doubt about it, And I had a good friend who was very close to her, actually. So that, shall we say, endorsement, or whatever way you portray it, that, okay, wait a minute, I am going to watch this film, and that was a big deal, actually. And I'm so happy. I mean, just maybe, Gabe, you in agreement on that in terms of people?
Yeah, I mean, I said this last night at an event that, without her, I don't even know if we've got a great film here, because so she really made the film, because this, like I said earlier, Patrick's life and story, the things, we start to, in the film early on, realize that this guy, either he's completely full of it, or he's the most extraordinary guy we've ever seen. And Patrick, said to me, he's like, Jane's my great friend, and, she's involved with me in this and that. And then finally, kind of near the middle, I just realized that, look, in order to keep the audience here, I said, Patrick, I need to talk to Jane Goodall. I have to. Like, she's got to either be in the film or whatever. And he said, okay, sure. So anyways, it took a little while, but Jane agreed to do it. And she told me, among many other things, Jane's a very mystical person. I know we think of her as a science, and she agreed, she believes in science and all that, but she's almost more believing in mysticism and the unseen. As I talked to her, but she told me straight up that Patrick's the most extraordinary person she's ever met. And think of how many people Jane Goodall's met, who, And people. So as soon as I got that, I was just like, okay,
Right.
We've got it. We're good.
Yeah,
We
we're
can
good to
keep the
go.
audience.
Yeah, right. We're good to go. Oh, can we just get a little bit, Patrick, from you, a little bit of how you grew up and some of the events that happened, and you were having to take care of the family, and just talk about that, how that your family evolved and what happened with your brother and so on. I think that's important.
Yeah. So, I started off in what you would call just an ordinary American family after World War II, kind of like, evolving into everybody was starting to be happy, thinking there was hope, the war's over.
Yeah.
I mean, I was born in 1950, and innovation started to take place also at the same time, so the world was in a changing place. And one of the most significant events that happened to me was I was 12 years old, or just turning 12, and my youngest brother, Tim, played on a construction site, and he got cut almost in half, getting pushed through a plate glass window. And when I say it, I mean he had like maybe 2 inches of skin or muscle on one side of his body, literally like opened up in half, all of his organs, everything.
Oh, God.
And my mother, there weren't ambulances in those days. I mean, there wasn't even phones easy. We were like on a party line, where you might be able to call somebody or not. So my mom's going, we got to get in the car. You got to hold your brother's two halves together and keep him from dying till we take him to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So his blood was spraying all over me. And a couple things happened to me. One is I became aware that I had a responsibility. He would die if I didn't show up. And I think that particular thing has stuck with me for the rest of my life. That's how I look at the world. If I don't help hold it together, it could potentially, just die. So we did get him to the hospital. He did not come out of the hospital for 4 years.
4 years?
Yes.
Holy shit.
And he had the 2 longest surgeries in history at the time. And he also became the first person to live without a spleen and the first semi-bionic person. So they had to build pumps and put miles of plastic tubing in his body to replace his blood systems. And so, and I mean, I was young at the time, so I can't tell what all those things are, but like they actually took his physical organs and moved them to a different place in his body, and relocated him and things like that. So
this is in the 60s, right? Or
yes,
something?
in the 60s. So my parents, there was myself and my 2 brothers. He was my youngest brother, and I had a middle brother who was between our ages. And my parents just came to me one day and said, your middle brother can go stay with his grandparents, but you're going to have to stay in our house, and we're going to have to go away. And we don't know how long we're going to be gone. We may come back once a week. We have no idea. And in those days, there weren't like phones and stuff where you could just call back and forth. We didn't have options in that way. We have to go to the hospital with your brother. And they went out the door, and, my mom made sandwiches for me and put them in the refrigerator and stuff and said, we'll make sure the neighbor gives you some money once in a while and stuff, but you're just going to have to make it on your own. And they didn't come back at all for the most part for 2 years. I mean, they came back a couple of times, and like would check on me or make sure that somebody was like looking in on me. But I had to kind of make it on my own. So
what the hell were they doing, for God's sake?
Well, they were living at the hospital. My brother died something like 70 times in just the first
they were with
round.
Your brother.
So they literally lived inside the hospital. They gave him a hospital room for, I don't know, maybe 8 months. They never left the hospital. And then they got a little apartment next to the hospital. And, my brother would code like every few days, so they couldn't leave. They were sure he was going to die. So, and he was at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, which is a huge, hospital. So while they were gone, an opportunity opened up, and I took off and joined the world's largest carnival called Royal American Shows. And, I didn't know anything about it. And when I say largest, it was huge. Had 2,000 employees, 2 full-size freight trains, 40 trucks. And the very first event I ever did was the Calgary Stampede. So I'd never been
really?
I'd never been to Canada. So, I went there and I saw all this crazy stuff. And to summarize that experience, several important things happened while I was there. The first thing is, I'm 13 years old and I don't know anything about the world like most kids who are 13. And all of a sudden I meet mafia, drug lords, prostitutes, con artists, multimillionaires, every kind of thing you can think of. And at the same time, the carnival decided that I should permanently work with them. And so they performed a marriage with me. I was 13 to a 21-year-old prostitute.
No.
And she fell in love with me and became my girlfriend and stuff all the way till I was 19 years old. And I thought I would marry her. It didn't work out that way. But so I had all these kind of experiences other people don't have. But the other thing is my father, in the course of what was going on, ended up becoming one of the top people working on the Apollo program. And I made more money than my father did. I had suitcases full of cash. And I'm like 13, 14 years old. And, I'd have $30,000, $40,000 in cash in the 60s. And so I just learned about money. I learned about people. I learned about life. And the other thing is I went on the carnival with my uncle, and my uncle was a black belt in karate. So, and this is before the Bruce Lee and all that kind of stuff. And he taught me karate and I became a black belt. And then we opened up martial arts school together. Then I studied Kung Fu from one of the master in San Francisco, Chinatown, since 1919. And I became the head of one of the largest Kung Fu associations. I did spar with Bruce Lee and I won the first world championship for martial arts. So that was a whole different life. Then really quick, I'll go to a couple more, and that is I got married, and then I decided I wanted to move away from the world and see what I could do. So I decided to be a pioneer, and I moved into the deep wilderness of New Mexico. At the time, there was no road to where I lived, and it was 30 miles to a highway. And I started out in a tent, hand dug my own well, built my own cabin, made my own gunpowder from bat manure, crazy stuff like that. Yeah. And by the time I got done, I really had a much wider view of the world than most people. And that turned into other things. The one other thing that played a significant role as to where I ended up now is that I was out in the middle of the wilderness, no way to make a living. And I was selling firewood, and I'm driving in a 2-wheel drive truck, literally across arroyos and fields, no roads, nothing, trying to deliver it and making no money in anything. And I decided to try to teach myself how to make jewelry. And I bought just a few little things and I started making some jewelry, and I sold it to the Native Americans who sold it to tourists on the highway. And my stuff just sold like crazy. And the short version of that story is I became a world famous jewelry designer. I mean, famous. And I ended up making a piece for the President of the United States, who was Ronald Reagan at the time. And that kind of started off my career in peacemaking and learning to interact with people around the world. And then part of that led to why I was in India.
What a story. Brief, too. I bet you could go on for a couple of hours.
Oh, yeah. There's many other stories in there, but that was kind of, just a synopsis of a couple of high points.
Yeah. So, Gabe, anyhow, you encounter all of this. You have in mind, of course, doing this film, and that seemed like a good idea. But then you have your inner skeptic running alongside of it at the same time. How did that evolve from the beginning to where we are now?
Yeah, I mean, Well, you talked earlier about kind of rational thinking and
Yeah.
the way we think in the West, and sort of trying to provide, evidence, and this whole story. And Patrick, I mean, like you just heard, I mean, you could make a documentary just on Patrick, let alone kind of following this prophecy. I kind of wanted to weave the story and the prophecy and kind of how
Yeah.
everything's unfolding. And then I happen to also be on my own journey alongside Patrick. Like you were saying, it's, we're all kind of on, I think, this journey. I am to kind of understand reality in this world and what we're doing here and our mission and what's real, what's not real. And when I was kind of led into this world of indigenous, culture, they talk about spirits, and, the way they tell stories, it's like almost in an abstract way. It's not necessarily always rational, and hard to follow sometimes. But at first you're sort of just thinking this is, maybe gibberish, or I don't understand it or whatever. But then, as I kind of, like Patrick was saying, as I kind of got further on in this journey, I started to understand. And I did start to kind of experiment on my own with some psychedelic plant medicines. And, I think that opens up a whole new portal into kind of reality and what this all is or isn't. And I can't say that I got like a lot more clarity with it, but it definitely like opened my eyes in a way to the infinite sort of layers of reality. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just. But the bottom line is, as I went on this journey, the questions that I started to ask at the beginning almost started to become irrelevant, and sort of, I was only focusing on them to deliver on the plot of this prophecy. But really, this movie is so much kind of deeper and more dynamic. It works at a lot of different levels, like you were saying, and it's inspiring. Patrick's life is inspiring. What he's trying to do, how he does it, the wisdom that it delivers. It works on that level. It works on, I think, the humor level. That to tell a story like this, that has a lot of serious elements to it, environmental and so on. But we've seen all the kind of dark and depressing ones. I mean, I think part of spirituality is humor and the absurdity, and that's kind of layered in it. It is absurd. Life is absurd, and it's all part of kind of the dynamics of the universe. And that's kind of layered in.
Yeah.
So
someone once asked Ram Dass, okay, what's I'm young and I'm just on the path or whatever. What's your two best pieces of advice that I could follow? And he said, love and humor. And I always remember that, because we take ourselves so damn serious, on every level. Yeah. What do you think psychedelics? Now, in the film, you do take a psychedelic as part of the film. Am I right about that?
Well, that's like a very mild one. It's called Hape. It's not. It's not super strong, but it's intense. But
it's not 5-MeO DMT.
Yeah, they're I've graduated.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, exactly. But I've done ones that are way, way more sort of psychoactive. But what is the question?
No, just in terms of how those doors opened up to you.
Yeah.
And certainly that is a reality for many, many, many people since the days when Richard Alpert and Tim Leary popularized it. That was opened up a door. for many, many people to understand that there's something outside of their thinking minds. Just start
Yeah.
there, There's a connectivity that we are not engaging with. That's another thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Patrick, definitely speak to it yourself in terms of how much of a part of that. I know medicine is a big part of it, right?
Yeah. And I also, through the process of working with different indigenous peoples and also through other spiritual pursuits, also experimented with psychedelics and, different kind of plant medicines myself. And so, like you said, there's a whole world out there that we aren't aware of. It's like a weird thing. It's like
Yeah.
all humans are walking along and they live in a story. I say that in the movie, but that's kind of what I mean. We live in a story. The story's constructed. It's either constructed by us or our parents or our community, and then we live in it and we don't look outside of it. So we're like in a bubble all the time. And all of a sudden something like the psychedelics come along or a particular spiritual experience and it bursts that bubble.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you find out about all this other stuff. It makes you question everything.
Yeah.
And then I think in the end, I've been doing this off and on for 56 years now, and I still couldn't tell you what it all means.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. We live in a creation that is amazing and has so many levels so far beyond that we don't even know to look for the next level because we haven't got to the place where we can see it, and I think that's a constant process for us to evolve as humans as we become more aware of all the possibilities. Like you said in the beginning, something I absolutely believe. There are no limitations. There are infinite possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And this movie, a psychedelic, a spiritual experience, whatever one may encounter. And, I love your thing about the story. Just briefly, my friend, his name is Krishna Das, he chants around the world, and he's very well known. And he talks about, you wake up in the movie to the movie of me. Yeah, that movie is the movie of me. You're the protagonist, the director, the writer, the producer. You even write your own reviews, and you read them. And until we break out of that syndrome, we are unfortunately at odds with the possibilities.
Yeah.
And it's all about a deeper understanding of reality. And that reality has different levels of consciousness, That doesn't wipe out the rational. That's there too. We use that. And we, ego mind is Ram Dass used to say, is a good servant but a shitty master. And, and wouldn't you, I mean, to me and all the work that we've done over the same amount of years as you, Patrick, I think, many people, especially from the West, are looking for a result that they project, and they are not allowing for it to manifest inside themselves. And when we look at indigenous wisdom, for instance, it takes all of that into account, and we have lost that. Is that you guys, both of you were there, and of course, Patrick, you've spent a lot of time there. Is that not something that we need transferred into our blood? We need a transfusion.
I think we absolutely need that transfusion. And much of my work now that I've brought a lot of these people together is to try to encourage what the indigenous people are, lovingly calling the people of the concrete. Um,
The people of the country.
to to widen their horizons and their understandings. One of the things that Gabe has brought up a couple times in other conversations we've had is that, when we visited the Kogi, they were listening to the birds singing. They were listening to the way the wind made certain leaves move certain ways. They listened to the water flowing. And from those sounds and experiences, they perceived things that were going on that we don't, because we're not listening to those things. And one of the things that I really love about my own life, I discovered, is in the movie, you see early on, I go, yeah, I talk to trees, right? That was one of the very first things I learned on a spiritual journey, was to talk to a tree. And people that are friends of mine are going, you're crazy, you're weird. A tree can't think, it doesn't talk, it doesn't communicate, it doesn't whatever. Well, of course, we fast forward 50 or 60 years later, and science has now proven that trees talk to each other, and they have all these complex communications, and, they create protections against diseases because other trees tell them about it. And we haven't even touched the edge of what that actually means. But you can talk to many of the Native Americans and other First Peoples, and, a tree will tell them something, and what the tree told them comes to be, or is actually true. I'll just tell you one last little experience I had. I was in Australia years ago, and I went out back a little bit with a group, and we were several of us Westerners, and led by a few indigenous elders out there, and we're just walking, like cross country, and then we had a lorry, or like a 4-wheel drive, Jeep, and the elder says, there's a tree out there. And by the tree, there are these animals that are there. And I think they're called wombies or whatever. I can't remember. Wombats, yeah. And there's a group of them, like 12 of them or something over there. And if we were hunting, we could go hunt them. And it's about, like 6 miles away. And so I'm asking, well, how would you know something like that? And he goes, Spirit has told me the trees and this have told me this. So we get in the Jeep, we drive 6 miles away, and sure enough, there's 12 wombats hanging around a tree. And this thing is in the middle of nowhere. It's like a desert, and there's just only one tree, and there's nothing. They're not eating the tree or anything. They just happen to be hanging out there. And that really blew my mind. And then after that, I went to a thing called the American Academy of Religion, and they had an indigenous elder who was very famous, talking about his experience going with a white man who wanted to film his experience of interacting with nature and the stories shared by indigenous people. And they were going to go across the outback, and he was going to tell them the stories. So he said they're going along, and the guy he's telling them these rocks were the ancient such and such people who turned to stone because they, said the wrong thing to this thing, which is the cactus that later turned into a snake. And he's telling all these stories that was going along, and they're driving in a little Jeep going along. And all of a sudden, the indigenous guy just stops talking for like an hour, doesn't say a thing. And the man who is trying to capture what he's saying said, I don't understand. You're not sharing anything. And he goes, you're going way too fast to tell the stories. And it was really a profound moment, because indigenous people move through life at a different speed than we do, because they are perceiving all these things as they're moving through, and we are not. Like, we're just driving down the street. If I take somebody and drive down the street with them, and I say, what plants were on the side of the road over the last 10 miles? What birds did you see? Whatever. No one could even answer that question. But real indigenous elders I work with could tell you pretty much what everything there was on the way. So it's a perception thing. And again, it's like living in a bubble, and the rest of the world you're blocking off.
So the challenge, I think, is speaking of what Patrick's saying, is how do you tell a story for mostly Western audiences getting into these ideas, and as you see in the journey, it's a conflict between the Western mind and kind of indigenous mind. These are fundamentally different languages, or not even languages, literal ways of perception and thought. It's another, I don't want to say animals, it's another consciousness state. You know what I'm saying? That you have to somehow get your mind or train when you're from a little kid to conceptualize the world in a certain way. It's like, you know, and maybe, I don't know if this is true because I didn't grow up indigenous, but like maybe if when you take a psychedelic, it maybe it brings you into the state that more close to what they're in. I don't know, but it's certainly incredible and just beyond anything. You know?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true, that psychedelics do bring you into a state of consciousness that certainly can parallel people who live it from the moment that they are born. I personally have an issue with the, I mean, actually what we're doing at the foundation is we're trying to, Ram Dass's big thing was the integration of the psychedelic experience. So, okay, what's next? What are you doing? You're going to keep taking ayahuasca every weekend?
Yeah.
Or, you know, how do you integrate that into your life? Because it's not about being a great ayahuasca curandero. It's about becoming a great person. Is what, we all believe that this is what we want from ourselves and from each other, and then the way to create the kind of interconnectivity and community. You know, we're talking about something now, Patrick, when you talk about driving in the Jeep and you're going too fast, look at us now, what we are now, and what these kids are growing into, having to deal with. I mean, having no attention span whatsoever because of the constant feeding of social media or whatever, digital media, whatever it may be. And how I think one of the things you're doing, the main thing, and about the prophecy, is helping unite these tribes, and not just them in the Amazon. I know, because in the movie I saw you were working with North, American Indians and so on. So eventually, though, and I know you're going back. I believe you're going back in the next couple of days, right?
Yeah,
to the
I'm going back in 2 days.
Yeah. What's is there? I mean, I keep reaching out. I don't want to, for ways in which this can be shared with people, not necessarily only through psychedelics, but how do we share what this is, what this perspective is, with our youth?
So right now, I have several different projects going, but one of the big ones that I am working on, partly starting right now when I'm going to Colombia, and then I'm coming back and going to Sedona, Arizona, is the indigenous elders from all across the Americas. And we also have elders from Australia and Siberia and other kind of places, but this particular group is more focused in the Americas. The grandfathers and grandmothers are asking that question you just asked, and we are meeting to try to come up with a plan of how to best share this wisdom with the young generations coming up. And it requires a lot of work because, as you said, they're in a different place, like they're on the internet doing something. So they don't want to go walk in the woods with some grandfather saying, this is a tree, talk to it. How do you get to that place? But I want to make sure before we end, I say something really important. You brought this up in the very beginning about the movie, since that's what we started with. The thing about this movie is that it has multiple different layers of things happening at the same time. And I want to speak to that because I'm the guy the movie's about. And I've seen the movie, like 15 times now. And I have to tell you that each time I see it, I discover something new myself.
Yeah.
And so, and it's, I'm in the movie, so other people approach me on Facebook and other social media and stuff. Oh, I had this profound experience. I saw this, I felt this, I learned this. I think it's worth seeing because it opens doors up the same kind of way like taking ayahuasca or something does. It makes people think from a different perspective, and they see different things that are happening.
Yeah.
I also wanted to share one last thing, and that is that an indigenous elder from Australia, well, his father's a First Nations person from Australia, and his mother's Maori. And he's creating a brand new social media platform that comes out this month. And the entire platform is geared towards moving young people to reconnecting with nature and spirit. It does everything that TikTok or, Facebook or anything else does, but it forces them to actually interact with nature and ask questions. And there's not enough space and time to tell you about all that, but it's going to help, because when I'm talking to the elders from the indigenous peoples, they don't have the experience of interacting with AI and all this kind of stuff like that. So they don't know how to address that to talk to the young people. And the young people don't interact in the world that these elders work in. So how do you bridge that gap and bring the two together? And there is a huge movement being forwarded by the indigenous peoples themselves. And the reason they're doing it is because their primary prophecies say that is what will happen when we all get to this place in humanity that we're at, that they will have an opportunity to speak and influence how things go. And they are stepping forward and trying to do that.
Yeah. Somehow I want to get together with you when you come back and see if there's a way we can offer, the platform that we have, Love, Serve, Remember, to invite people in with you. So
Sure.
we'll talk about that. I mean, it just occurs to me. And Gabe, thanks for bearing with everything and doing this trip and going back and forth to the jungle, out of nowhere. That's pretty great that you put the time in and you had the faith that this was something important for you as well as anybody else who might encounter this film. So I think great job.
I appreciate it. It's a real honor to be with you. And, I've listened to a lot of Ram Dass and read a whole bunch, and it's also been a part of my journey. So it's all a part of it. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And Patrick, so great that I had a chance to meet you. I mean, I really appreciate what you're doing. And somehow we'll see if we can take part in it. So we'll keep in touch with you. Everybody, how can people watch the film, Gabe, at this point?
Yeah, so right now we're still in our theatrical mode, but if you go to the website, which is themanwhosavestheworld.com, you can find all the information about the film and screenings and when it's going to be available in your city. Or pretty soon we're going to start having some virtual screenings and then be available, to rent and buy, and then ultimately on a streaming platform. But for the next 2 to 3 months, we'll still be kind of doing theatrical screenings and just stay tuned there. And then Who Saves the World are the social handles for other information as well.
That's great. So everybody, you might have to have a little patience if it's not in your town immediately, but it will be available. I know the routine quite well myself, so you.
On June 1st, it'll be widely available. So.
Oh, okay, great. We'll keep in touch and be able to let people know that. So wonderful to have both of you here, and I really appreciate this. This is Mindrolling on Be Here Now Network. Go to BeHereNetwork.com, and there's all sorts of wonderful teachers, and like Alan Watts is there, and Krishnamurti, and Krishna Das, and Ram Das, and Jack Cornfield. We have a wonderful network that we're really proud of. That's in its 10th year anniversary this summer. So stay tuned for more of that. And thank you, guys. We'll see you
Thank you.
next time.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Thanks so much.